And good evening, everybody, on this amazing Sunday evening. We're so excited that you're here. We're so grateful that you're here. We already see that Scotland is in the house, Sydney, Australia. Folks from all around the world are here. And we're so grateful for each and every one of you. We're going to start a little early tonight because we have a lot to cover. And this is going to be episode number 2 in the JonBenét Ramsey dissection. We're going to take a deeper dive from the Cold Case Foundation's perspective. We're grateful for your kindness and your courtesy in the chat. We have Mr. John Ramsey is going to be with us again tonight. So we just ask that you keep an open mind and be respectful. That's the only thing we ask. And that you hit the like and subscribe button and send this around the world. This is an opportunity, a rare opportunity for you, as well as us, to participate on a one-on-one, no holdback conversation with a gentleman whose daughter was murdered almost 30 years ago. And he's always been an open book. And so he has opened himself up for you tonight and his family. And we have everybody here this evening. So without further ado, let me introduce the panel. I'm going to start off. I'll just bring everybody in, and then we'll go over what the game plan is tonight. So Greg Cooper is here, Dean Jackson, Mr. Ramsey. I'll let Butch tell everybody. I'll let him tell you who he is. He's behind the scenes. Dr. Larry Simon, of course, and Kurt Pillard from the Smith Group. And then the guy that we call the wizard, who will not be on camera, Mr. Zach himself. And guys, welcome to the interview room this evening. So grateful that you're here.
Good to be with you, Chris.
Good evening.
Tell everybody a little bit about who you are, my friend.
Did you call me?
Well, I'm John Ramsey. I'm JonBenét's father.
Can you hear me?
Yep. Yes.
Okay, Greg. Yes, I'm sorry. I'm going to put you in the upper right-hand corner up here. And then I'm going to move Doc into the middle, move Kurt over here, and then Zach and I down at the bottom. So let's do a brief introduction for everybody, and we'll start with Greg.
Okay. Chris, it's always good to be with you and your listeners. Appreciate the opportunity, and particularly Mr. Ramsey, who has been very forthright and has allowed us, at his request, to participate in reviewing his daughter's case. And we take it very seriously as a foundation. I'm the executive director for the Cold Case Foundation. We've been functioning now for going on 14 years. We provide expert resources to law enforcement agencies and victims' families who are related to issues of homicide, missing persons, unidentified remains, and essays where there has been serial characteristics. We have experts ranging from homicide detectives to crime analysts to forensic psychiatrists and psychologists, all experts in their own right, meaning that, to my knowledge, my knowledge is that all of them have testified as experts in court and have gone through that rigorous capacity to do so. I've served as a police chief a couple of different departments, and I was in the FBI for about a third of my career, and served as a criminal profiler under the direction of John Douglas, and I served as his assistant. also the Violent Criminal Apprehension Program Manager in the FBI, and then also as a instructor for the National Academy, FBI National Academy. So it's good to be here with everybody.
And Greg's also an author of some books, so those links are below. I'll jump over to Dean real fast. And Dean, introduce yourself from our panel.
I'm Dean Jackson, and I'm the Deputy Executive Director for the Cold Case Foundation, and I've been working with Greg since he started the foundation. I have a background as a Deputy Coroner, and also have been working with law enforcement in critical incident stress management, as well as assisting families going through some pretty tough things over the years, and have just had the opportunity for the last year time with John and get to know him and understand more about their family. And I'm excited to be able to be part of this team.
Awesome. And Butch, you're up.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Chris, for allowing me to participate. My name is Butch Rabiega, and I serve as the AI Program Director for the Cold Case Foundation. I bring more than 30 years of law enforcement experience, much of it spent with the FBI as a crime and intelligence analyst. During my career, I worked extensively with the violent criminal apprehension under Greg's supervision, analyzing violent crime cases as well as missing and unidentified persons cases from across the country. Throughout my career, my focus has remained the same, transforming large volumes of complex investigative information into actionable intelligence that can help move the case forward. Today, I continue that work at the Cold Case Foundation as a volunteer, and I'm grateful to be working for them and working on cases like this. The case we're discussing tonight, just so you know, involves more than 23,000 pages of investigative material. And now to help us examine and organize that information, the CCF is leveraging Veritone's advanced AI-powered technology to identify connections, uncover insights, and support the investigative process. By using this, we can come at this entire case from a 360-degree view at any time and bring pertinent information to the forefront. And while each member of this panel brings their own unique perspective and expertise, we are all volunteers, and we are united by a single purpose: seeking justice for a 6-year-old girl whose life was tragically cut short, and helping provide answers, peace, and closure for her family who has carried this loss for far too long. Thank you, and I look forward to this presentation tonight.
Well done. Great. Excellent. Dr. Larry Simon.
Yes, hello. I'm Lawrence. Thanks for having me here again, Chris and John. Good to see you again. Good to see everyone again. Pleasure to be with the Cold Case Foundation. Just a little bit about myself. I got my doctorate degree in clinical psychology with a focus of forensic, and for many, many years I've been working in the correctional system in different states, and in mostly closed management settings, including death row. So I had the opportunity to interview some of these individuals that in the past that have done some terrible crimes. And again, my pleasure again to be here, and thank you for having me again.
Absolutely. Kurt, tell everybody about you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Kurt Pillard. I'm formerly the Investigations Division Commander for the Colorado Springs Police Department, where I used to work with Lou Smith. Lou was a friend and colleague to many police officers really across the country. He was the ultimate professional, and he got involved with this case. And when he lost his battle to cancer in 2012, one of the last things that he wanted to do was pass along all of his information and see that this case came to a successful resolution. So now I'm involved with Cindy and Kent Mara and the Smith family team. I'm the law enforcement lead for the Smith family team. And we're here to join the Cold Case Foundation and figure this all out. come to a successful solution. So thanks for having me.
And thank you for that introduction. And we are grateful as well to your group that we collaboratively are working together here to find the correct answers. And then down on the bottom, we have Zach. Zach, if you'd give the audience just a brief introduction.
Hello, my name is Zach. I've been working with the Cold Case Foundation as an investigative analyst for 3 years. I will be providing support to the gentleman you see on camera tonight. Enjoy the show.
And that's what we call Zach the Wizard. He's he is just an amazing human being. As the audience will come to love him as we go on. And so we want to remind the audience tonight that this is the first time the Cold Case Foundation has ever actually showed you what we do behind, in front of the camera versus behind the scenes. We've been involved in a lot of different things, both nationally and internationally. We've been involved in different things. We normally don't do this in front of an audience, but we feel that this case justifies transparency 1,000%. And so, Mr. Ramsey has been working with us for just about a year now, and we've been meeting many, many times throughout the years. And of course, we're leveraging some tools that both Butch and Zach are experts in. You'll hear a lot about Veritone and tools that in our toolbox as an organization that we have access to. So we're just not going to pull things out of the air and submit it to you, the public. We're going to pull things out of the air that we have access to. And that may be a case file, that may be a witness statement, that may be anything that would support an investigative analysis and or process. Do we have all the answers, or will we find the answers? We don't know. That's why we're here. We're here on a quest to help bring justice to a little girl who's sleeping in her room on Christmas, around Christmas time. And there was no better way to do this than, in my opinion, assemble a group like this. And by the way, the individuals here may rotate as we get into different aspects of this investigative analysis here. And what we're going to do is we're going to pull from our playbook on how we do this stuff. And so tonight is episode number 2. And it will be the first time you, even the audience, will be able to throw a couple questions up in the chat over here. But I want to tell you, I'm not going to allow comments at the conclusion of the presentation tonight. And the reason for that, quite frankly, is the internet is just too vicious. And we don't have all the answers yet. So, we haven't made any decisions in relationship to what is the answer for JonBenét. That will be probably towards the conclusion. But up until then, this case has garnished so much information worldwide that there's a lot of misinformation out there. And there are 2 camps that we've noticed. And so we just want to keep this pure. And what I mean by that is we're going to hear directly from John Ramsey himself. And we are going to base our investigation off of not only the evidence that we have access to, but from the individuals that were there. And that is Mr. Ramsey himself. So, John, again, thank you so much for your willingness to continue to step up and talk to the public. So thank you again. You're up in Michigan. Whoop, you're muted there real fast, John. I think by accident. There you go. There you go.
Yes, we are at the moment. been nice to be here. Now, I'm grateful for the continued help and interest in our case and resolving this. And I'm hoping that some good structurally will come out of it in terms of how our system responds to particularly the murder of a child. We don't do a good enough job as a country in bringing our resources to bear when one of our children is murdered or taken from us. So that's my long-term goal. Thank you all on the Submit team as well. We've got an amazing group of talent that's volunteered to help here, and I can't thank you enough. So it's
Awesome.
nice to be here.
And just a reminder to the group, make sure you're muted while everybody else is talking. And that way we don't get feedback for the audience, et cetera. So for the audience, so here's what we're going to do. Here's the game plan for this evening. Episode 2 is we're gonna dive really into the family dynamics, and we're going to also talk about give you a brief recap, family dynamics, i.e. victimologies of various family members, not just John himself, not just Patsy, but the children. And we're going to do what we do is we're going to talk about pre-incident behaviors and pre-incident situations that are taking place with different family members, et cetera. And of course, with stressors in relationship to those family dynamics. And so a recap to remind you, John, what year did you get this letter? 2008?
2008. Yes.
And this was from the district attorney's office that cleared you from the DNA sources that were found on your daughter, correct?
That's correct. There were unidentified male DNA found in January 97, early on, that did not match us and was so reported to the police. And what the DA did in around 2008, was use the latest DNA technology at that time, which was 10 years later, to do additional testing. And she found additional male DNA in other parts of JonBenét's clothing and from the crime scene. So it gave her confidence that there indeed was an unidentified male that came into our house and murdered JonBenét. So she was gracious enough to clear us, but also apologize for the way we've been treated up to that point. So it was very courageous of her to do that.
And today you're still in the fight. I know last year you attended CrimeCon. Tell the audience what the purpose of that was about.
Well, I've engaged with the media for years when they're interested to talk about it, because I want to keep pressure on the police to do everything they can do to solve our case. They've got other things to deal with and other focuses, and so I didn't want our case to end up in a cold case file. So that's been the only reason I've engaged with the media so far. And I think long term, I'm hoping that we can make a difference in terms of some of the problems we saw in the investigation that need to be addressed as a country.
Okay. How's that fight going?
Well, I think we're making some progress in terms of police focus. They made some structural personnel changes at the recommendation of the Citizen Review Board, and that had to happen before any progress was going to take place. And we've met with the new people and are encouraged that they are experienced and open-minded and want to settle the case. So that had to happen first before anything progressed.
Okay, awesome. So that's the purpose of this particular letter this evening. We also want to talk about the victim risk continuum, and for that, I'm going to go over and turn that over to Greg real fast. And Greg, if you wouldn't mind, tell the audience what your opinion is in relationship to this particular victim.
You bet. So when we were working cases at the National Center for the Analysis of Violent Crime at the FBI, just to recap what we talked a little bit about last time that we met, one of the first things that we look at when we look at a crime is victimology, trying to understand as much as we possibly can about the victim. What I like to refer to is vicariously knowing who the victim is. And we oftentimes talk about the victim individually and just exclusively, without acknowledging that there are other victims that are involved. There will be a primary victim, and typically there are secondary victims as well. And in this particular case, you have JonBenét, who is the primary victim, of course, but you also have secondary victims, which consists of her family. And we're going to talk with Mr. Ramsey about that this evening, and who the family members are and how they were affected by this incident. So the first thing that we look at when we try to evaluate a victim is trying to determine and getting a sense of why that victim was selected, if in fact they were selected, to become a victim of that particular type of crime, whatever the case is. And we go through a process of what we refer to, and we'll make reference to it, as the 10 filters of profiling. And the first filter for our investigative model is victimology. So the first thing that we look at in terms of a victimology is trying to, number one, understand the victim's lifestyle. In other words, does the lifestyle of the individual elevate their potential or likelihood of being at risk of becoming a victim of this particular type of a crime? And we try to gauge it from low to medium to high risk. Secondarily, we look at what's going on in the victim's life proximate to the incident itself. And then we take into consideration during that process, as we look at the environment, the situation, and the circumstances in which the crime has occurred. And just in summary, what we have determined over thousands and thousands of cases is that the lower risk an individual's lifestyle, the higher the probability that the victim has been targeted specifically, and that the offender knows who the victim is, and most likely the victim knows or is at least aware of who the offender is. Going to the other extreme of the continuum, we look at high risk. High risk would consist of those victims who put themselves in a very high risk environment, situation, and circumstances, and may also include professional types of activities. And what we have found with the high risk category is that the higher the risk the individual, the higher the probability that the victim and the offender are strangers, and the victim is a victim of what we refer to as opportunity, selected by the offender, most likely out of a set of circumstances in the environment and situation that fits a given potential set of or arranged or seeking for arrangement that makes the selection of that victim very easy comparatively to the low risk victim. And in our assessment, we would look at JonBenét as a very low risk victim, understanding, of course, that any activities outside the home that bring attention to her and exposure, that has the tendency to be able to elevate exposure to people or strangers that she's not familiar with. And so it can elevate her risk level. But by far and large, she would be considered a low risk victim. And because of the very close nature of the family and the high family concern and considerations that they're involved in as a family for security purposes of their children, those otherwise elements that could elevate the risk level to say medium risk can also be mitigated by the things the family does to bring that risk level back down to low risk. And so we still find ourselves in a situation where we're most probably looking at an offender who has targeted JonBenét and knows who she is.
Okay, so Greg, how does that then play into filter number one? To explain victimology and what we're hoping to accomplish tonight with Mr. Ramsey.
Okay, so this evening, as you can see, the list of the 10 filters, the first filter we believe is the first filter that should be considered in any case. And the more we understand the victim, and in this case, we include the Ramsey family, the more we understand the victim and victims, the more we understand the offender. We get a sense and a feel for why this particular family was targeted, selected. Was it because of a preferred selection as a victim, or did they fit a particular fantasy that they may have had? Is there a possibility of the victim, of the primary victim, being a substitute victim based upon the evaluation of that victimology? So fantasy plays a very significant role. We also find that in victimology, we try to understand why it is that an offender selects a victim based upon the environment, the situation, the circumstances that we're talking about. And oftentimes, an offender will select a victim opportunistically because it fits this fantasy that they've had in their mind and have played it out over and over and over again throughout this period of time in which they selected the fantasy and created the fantasy and continue to develop this fantasy. And oftentimes, if the fantasy is the most important part of it, then they're fantasy driven, not just victim driven, but the victim can fit that fantasy. Or we've got to consider the possibility that the victim, is it possible that she was exclusively targeted for who she was? Or is it possible she could be a substitute victim, representing the most likely, in this particular case, if she would be considered as a substitute victim, then you've got to look at who is the individual in the family or individuals in the family that would fit that aspect of it. And certainly we would have to look at Patsy and John as the parents and wonder about those dynamics and how those dynamics may have involved in the victim, or rather in the offender's fantasy life and consideration for the selection of the victims. So, we've heard about JonBenét being the only and primary victim for almost 30 years. But as we evaluate all of the victimology in this case, John Ramsey and his wife, Patsy, and the whole family have been victimized in this particular case from the very beginning. And we're going to talk about some of the effects of that potential substitute victim, if you will. Does she represent the whole family again, or is she exclusively by herself in this? So what we're hoping to discuss tonight is just becoming very, very familiar with all members of the family and this more comprehensive look at victimology.
Okay. Anybody have any other thoughts before we get into the dive here? Dean, Dr. Simon, or anybody? And remember, you're muted, so unmute. There you go.
One of the things I think maybe to help people get their arms around this whole idea is thinking about yourself. All of us, if we were represented by a beach ball, every stripe of that beach ball is somebody who has a relationship with us. So, for example, if somebody really wants to get to know you, who should they be talking to? And I think one of the things that does stick out in this case is that by and large, the media has really determined who JonBenét was and who the family is. And so one of the things that I think we've been talking about is how do we get kind of beyond that and get down to who was this really this family? What was their dynamics with one another? What was happening at their life at that time? And getting different perspectives. In JonBenét's case, we have to rely on others to tell us that story. But in the rest of the family, and obviously Patsy is not with us anymore, but different people are able to give different kind of stripes of that beach ball to really fill in and understand who it is. And one of the things that we've seen looking at cases across the country is that oftentimes the victimologies are very shallow and very narrow in scope. And so one of the things we're always looking at is how do we expand that and how do we get more and more information. And Greg used a term earlier where he said really vicariously getting to know that person. We want to know this family as though we've been long friends with them for years. We know and understand how they kind of operated, how they function. So when people start thinking, well, what's the goal here? The goal is to get to know this family well enough that we can kind of start and say, well, that's how the Ramsey family did things. A lot of times we project our family onto other families, but what we're really interested in, how did this family function? How did they operate? What was the thought process in so many things that were happening at that time in their life? And so giving voice to that and really helping. And one of the things I can tell you, looking at the cases we have over the years, when we get stuck, we always go back to victimology. It's kind of our return to the center and start building again. So it's very appropriate for us to spend quite a bit of time on this tonight and really give John a chance to answer questions and open up about this whole dynamic of this family. And I think I can tell you that from my personal experience over the last year, we've gotten to know John. We've gotten to understand, and there were questions that we were able to ask that really helped us understand the family dynamics and what was happening. So hopefully we'll give the audience a little opportunity to do that tonight.
Thank you. And Dr. Simon, why is that critical? Because you run group sessions with these serial SA guys as well as serial killers who are currently locked up, and you actually sit with them on a daily basis. So tell the audience why this is critical coming off of episode number 1. What struck you and why it's critical to know who the victimology is?
Well, and going back to what Greg was saying about the fantasy structure, is that what the fantasy does is it manages overwhelming psychological trauma. So in my experience dealing with some of these folks in the past that have done these types of things, is the offender more or less omnipotently attempts to overturn the natural power dynamic. So in doing so, they replace, in a sense, their own unconscious feelings of helplessness and dependency with some sort of mastery and dominance or control. So, and the fantasy, it more or less becomes fused with violence. And each time they think about it, they dream about it, it's reinforced over and over and over again, until eventually in their mind, it's not enough.
So let's kick off with John. We're going to take you back, and we're going to take you back to this day. And I'm going to go ahead and kind of let Greg drive and just tell us about what's going on here.
In those pictures, that's when Patsy and I were married, and that was I'm not going to try to remember the date, but it was Melinda, my youngest daughter Melinda, at the time, and John Andrew is a little guy in front, my son, and you can't see her, but Beth, my oldest daughter, is on the right to the left of Patsy, and they were in our wedding, and Patsy loved them dearly, and they loved her.
And John, how did you meet Patsy?
We were married in Atlanta, Georgia, where I'd lived for a number of years. I was stationed there in the Navy at the Naval Air Station in Atlanta, and really liked Atlanta and just decided to stay, basically. So that was our home.
And can you share with us how you met Patsy? Wonder if he
I
can
think he
hear
has
me.
a delay in his internet again.
Okay.
John, can you hear us? He's frozen.
Yes, I can.
Yeah, your internet's going wonky.
Let me change internets here.
Okay, we'll
We have
wait.
a real problem with internet service here.
This is a great picture.
Yeah, I look a little younger there. Quite a bit younger, actually.
Yeah,
While John's doing that, Chris, I just would like to mention that, as everyone here knows, that you have a victim of a crime, and that's a tragedy. But the other tragedy is that the surviving family members are victims whose lives are changed forever from that point forward. And hopelessness and the impact on their lives is so great that finding justice for the victim and giving peace and closure to these family members is so important.
great point. Absolutely great point. So can you hear us now, John? Okay.
I
No,
can.
Yeah, you're frozen again. Your internet is not very good. I know you're up in the woods. Is there any way to
It
get?
shouldn't be that bad. We're in a little town here, but
Yeah.
let me move here real quick.
All right, he just dropped off because he lost his signal. But
Well, some of the things that we would like to entertain here, Chris, is knowing how he met Patsy, what types of characteristics about her attracted him to begin with, and vice versa in the development of their relationship. Because we're trying to understand aspects of the relationship and the individual. Because you've got, he's one individual, Patsy's another, and together they represent another whole concept of a relationship, not just individually, but collectively. And the more we begin to understand that, it applies to all the members of the family seeking similar kinds of information. Can you hear us, John?
Yeah. Curable. Let's
Yeah,
see. Hold on.
no problem. Finish your thought, Greg, while he's getting that set up.
So as you understand who the victims are, we begin to get a sense of those types of observations that we make and evaluations that we make about the victims' lives, lifestyles, their interests, their hobbies, the work that they do, the relationships that they have. What is it about those relationships and individually the characteristics become attractive to the offender? Those are the kinds of things we want to extract from a victimology, and then to begin that whole investigative process. That's why we always begin using this 10 filter investigative model. And we start number one with victimology, because it really opens things up to the probabilities of the relationship between the victim and the offender, rather than the possibilities that it's some stranger that walked by, on Christmas or Christmas Eve and decided to burglarize a home, and lo and behold, he comes across a family and a little girl that he decides to victimize. That's not what happened. And the more we know and understand the family and the individuals in that family, the more we recognize the improbability of that kind of crime here. This was a very well thought out crime, and victimology will play a role in discerning that.
Yeah, John, he's just spinning now. I don't know what's going on with that, but let me take him out here for a minute. All right, so let's talk about where we left off last week, in the last episode, while we're waiting for him to get his. And remember, last time we talked to him the other day, he said, if I have to get in my car and drive away to get the best internet, I'm going to do that. And so it won't surprise me he's walking out to his car as we speak here. So hopefully that will resolve his issues. Oh, there he is. He's back again. I just feel so bad that everything's a judgment. A simple internet problem is a judgment. And, right, Doc, Simon? In a type of case like this, I mean, if the guy sneezes, he didn't sneeze correctly. Just everything. Are you back with us, Mr. John?
I'm back. I don't know if you can hear me or not.
Well, you're frozen. So how about try this? Down at the bottom, you see the little camera icon?
Yeah.
Click that off and just see if that helps the bandwidth. Okay. Now, if you can give me a 10 count, see if that's going to work any better.
1, 2, 3,
Whoop.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Yeah, but if you just turn off your camera, okay, and we'll come back to that later. There you go. And we'll just do this verbally. How about that? Would that be okay with you?
All right. Sure.
Okay, I think that works a little better. So tell me if you can see this picture again. Can you see your wedding picture?
Yes, I can.
Okay, perfect. Then the question from Greg was, and we'll pick it up from there, is how did you and Patsy meet?
We met actually I met her through friends who were mutual friends. She was visiting them in Atlanta, and I was invited to dinner, and Patsy was there. And I wasn't invited to meet her. She just happened to be visiting our mutual friends. And at the time, I thought, gosh, she's pretty, but she's young. I think I was 33 or 34. And she was 23, I think. We were 10 or 11, 12 years difference. So she wasn't, and I was single at the time, but she wasn't on my radar. She was, I thought, too young. Nice girl, but And then as I got to know her, I thought, man, she's really sharp and a lot more mature than a typical 22-year-old. And so we went out for a date several times, I guess, and she just really impressed me as who she was, regardless of age. She's very mature and very grounded, and I eventually asked her to marry me, and she said, "Well, I need to talk to my mother first." So, I was older than her, and I'm sure, but her parents were wonderful to me, and so it all worked out.
And John, what was it about Patsy that attracted you to her? Obviously, she's very pretty. It's obvious.
Well, she just was really a very put together person. Not and she wasn't. I mean, she was obviously attractive, but that wasn't really the primary draw. I guess it was just she was very, very smart, very mature, and grounded, and wholesome, and all the above. And she just was a very neat person, regardless of age. She could have been 10 years older, and I would have still been equally impressed by who she was. But she was younger, and that originally was kind of a showstopper.
And what kind of common interests did you have?
Well, she had moved to Atlanta to work for an advertising agency. Graduated, believe it or not, journalism, and was working for an advertising agency. And she was just very easy to be with, and I wouldn't say we had mutual interests at the time, particularly, but eventually she got to know my children, and she was wonderful with them, and they really liked her. I could tell that. And I don't know, it just clicked. I'd been divorced for 2 or 3 years, I guess, when I met her, and so it just I don't know a better word for it than it just really clicked. Our relationship was really clicked, and she was very just very solid person and very kind person. She was extremely kind, and she was from West Virginia, small town in West Virginia, and and she laughed at my jokes. That was a big thing.
Oh, that's a big thing. Absolutely.
Yeah, right. So we got along very well, and I was very attracted to her inner being personally, who she was.
Sure. And what brought her to Atlanta from West Virginia?
Well, she graduated from journalism from West Virginia University, where she had up in West Virginia, and then came to Atlanta to work, better job opportunities. And these friends, our mutual friends, they were from West Virginia. They'd been in high school together, basically. And that's how she knew my friends, they were my neighbors at the time. And so she came to visit them, and that's when we met. And I don't remember if she had a job then to start or if she was still looking, but she came to Atlanta to seek employment, basically.
Sure. Dare I ask you what she saw in you?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, here I am, looking back on it, I had 3 young children. I was divorced. I was employed. I had a real small little business. um, and what was I guess I really appreciated was her parents really accepted me.
Hmm.
Here's their oldest daughter, just starting out in life after college, and she runs into this guy with 3 kids that wants to get married. And but her parents were great, and they really took me in.
And how long did you know her, or did you date her before you were married? Is he gone?
Yeah, he just froze again.
Okay.
We may
Yeah.
have to ask him to go into the car like
Yeah.
he did the other day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that okay with you guys?
Sure. And let me invite any members of the group here to also participate in this process.
There you go, John. You can. That's all right.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're fine here. You're looking good.
So how long did you date each other, John, until you were married?
We dated, I guess, 1.5 years, 2 years, something like that. And got married in Atlanta and ended to leave Atlanta. That was my home, and she really liked Atlanta. And so we bought a little house there. At the time we met, I was living in an apartment building. We bought a little house and started remodeling it, and off we went.
So your business not really taken off at that point then, would you say, John? Or
Say again, please.
had your business really taken off at that point, or was it still in your business, your work? Was it still in the early stages, or was it?
Well, at the time I was a manufacturer's representative for instrumentation, electronic instrumentation. I'd graduated as an electrical engineer, so I had that credential to get that job. And I was in sales basically, and worked with pretty much all large companies that use
modern technology. He's got to go up to Elon Musk. Zach, Zach, can you get that fixed, please? We haven't heard from Zach. Any thoughts at all while we're waiting for him? I don't think any of us anticipated this piece of the puzzle tonight. That's okay. Whenever it rains, it pours. So we're good. Good things will come out of this in terms of people get to hear it firsthand. And let me see if there's a couple of things up here. A couple years ago, great man. Cold Case Foundation for this deep dive. Yes, thank you for being here with us. I'm going to ask him to, if he would, and drive over to the same spot that he was in our last meeting. Or Dean, can you text him?
Yeah, I'll call him real quick.
Okay, make sure you're muted, please. And that way we can make sure that he at least is heard correctly. Dr. Simon, this dynamic in social media today, where a gentleman like this is under so much scrutiny for the last 30 plus years, and you talked about, or I've heard you talk about the implications if somebody does something and it gets interpreted a certain way. What kind of emotional stress does this put into our society as a whole?
Yeah, I think people have their own perceptions, for example, how people should act when they suffer trauma. But the brain architecture is completely different with every individual. So when they suffer trauma, they may react or process the information in a different way. And so outwardly, that may project something that in someone else's experience may have led them to believe something that is false. A false interpretation based on an interpretation how they believe someone should act in a particular situation when that's not the case, when again, their brain is processing the trauma in a different way.
Interesting. Go a little deeper. What do you mean? How does that, for the layperson, what exactly, unpack that?
So for example, let's say a police involved shooting, let's say someone may process that trauma differently, may have a different effect than someone else, you see. So it's variable. It just depends. And if someone is told something, let's say, if they're delivered food on a plate and it's the only food that's being offered, they're going to eat the food, you see, and they're not going to know of the other dishes that may be out there because that's the food that's in front of them. So they're going to interpret it, or they're going to eat whatever they're being served. But trauma, again, the brain, you go back to the brain architecture, it's just processed completely differently. So,
and people aren't trained to respond, are they? They respond in the moment based upon their own experience, but we have a tendency to judge people based upon our own experience and how it affected us. We know how we reacted, or somebody else that was close to us, and we think therefore that somebody else who's experienced it should act the same way. We're looking for commonalities, right?
There we go. Perfectly said, as a matter of fact. And you just mentioned the word training, experience.
Yeah, because here's a great question: who wrote the ransom note? And by the way, we're going to get to all this stuff, so put your seatbelts on. This group right here, we're going to answer all these questions as we go along. And
we'll have additional experts come on and participate in that.
Yeah. So these are great questions. But, for 30 years, Doc Simon, like you've been talking about, for 30 years, there's this messaging to the public. And right now, though, Butch, how much access do we have? How many pages do we have of investigative materials?
Over 23,000.
Okay. So just for the audience, nobody has ever had access to 23,000 pieces of material from this investigation. And so you are seeing history right in front of you. And unfortunately, we're going to we'll get over a couple of these glitches, the internet glitches, but
this kind of reminds me, Chris, on how investigations go.
Yeah, exactly. Great point, Greg. And so while we got a little downtime here for a second, you, Greg, I think Greg is pretty humble here, as well as Dr. Simon and others, Butch, of course, and Dean, all of you. I'm always, every time I sit down with you guys, something new comes out there. And I'm just getting to know Kurt, but his career was also pretty amazing. But Greg, you actually were kind of John Douglas's right-hand guy, and actually his protege. He was pretty much your mentor, and keep me on the straight and narrow if I step out of lane here. But when he left, you were assigned the unit chief at the behavior science unit, right? So maybe tell the audience a little bit about that and who came in after you, just while we got some downtime.
Sure. I was serving as John's what we referred to it back in that day as relief supervisor. It's an assistant, if you will. So anytime John was out of town, I would fill in for him and take over the responsibilities of the unit chief while he was absent. And so John left prematurely from the Bureau for medical reasons, not because he didn't have the amount of years in. He had already qualified for retirement because he had more than enough years in. So he had to leave earlier than what his plans were because of some health reasons. And some of the things that had kind of reemerged, health issues that had reemerged based upon years prior when he had investigated the Green River Killer case. And he ended up with viral cephalitis. And if you read the book, Mind Hunters, it goes into detail about the level of seriousness of that viral cephalitis. It almost killed him, and he was out of the office for, I think it was about almost 6 months. And he was expected, the doctors expected him to die, even bringing his family back, or they're up to the Northwest to be by his side from Virginia, because they anticipated the worst case scenario. And really, quite miraculously, he did survive, and he came back to end up becoming the unit chief of what was referred to at the time the investigative support unit, which consisted of 3 different programs. The VICAP, or Violent Criminal Apprehension Program, the Arson Bombing Investigative Services, and then the profiling unit, which was called, or program, which was called Criminal Investigative Analysis Program, SIAP. So he became the unit chief over all 3 of those programs, as well as administered over the National Center for the Analysis of Violent Crime in that capacity.
And you guys were all in kind of like a dungeon, right? Underground.
Yes, that's exactly right. In fact, Butch lasted longer down there than I did. I left a little earlier than he did. He ended up retiring from the FBI. And I served as the unit chief for about a year before I left the Bureau, and then took a police chief position. But Butch, you ought to share with him some of those experiences. I had the privilege, John and I had the privilege of hiring Butch as one of our analysts.
Yes, I'm so grateful for the opportunity you had given me, and it was a great experience in those days. Hitting that elevator button and it going down and down and down and down to the tunnels, and we were using reel-to-reel tapes at that time. Not even in the arson and bombing unit, we had these big reels. That's how we recorded information and cataloged it. And so working with John and Greg was a great experience to learn from those 2. There was no better format to learn from. I mean, they had this innate sense of how to do this work. You know, it just came natural to them. And they tried to teach me, but I was a slow learner, and I think they gave up. But they let me stay anyway, and it was such a great time. I mean, yeah, right below the shooting range.
And,
That's right. That's
you know,
right.
I saw John at CrimeCon in Vegas, and, you know, it was really interesting. Jesse Weber, one of the, a really cool, great guy and good journalist, was interviewing him. And the first thing he started talking about was JonBenét Ramsey.
Yeah.
And, you know, it kind of shifted for a little bit. And then, but he wanted to say a whole bunch more. And I don't think people know that he was asked to actually go and hang out with the family And hey, the Reader's Digest version on that. Here's John here. John, can you hear us? I don't know if he can hear us yet. You know, sometimes StreamYard is just wonky.
Well, just to follow up on that, Chris.
Yeah.
I think we mentioned it on the last meeting that we had covering this case with your viewers. But just as a little summary, you had mentioned John was my mentor. Absolutely, he was my professional mentor and also personal. We became very, very good friends and are still good friends to this day. I consider John more like a brother, except a brother that I happen to love and admire and respect. not a brother that you're at odds with. And I had the opportunity my wife and I had the opportunity to spend Thanksgiving with he and his family, which was a real highlight for us. There he is.
I think we may have solved the problem. Hang on. Hey, I think you're on.
I won't disparage AT&T's internet service. I should.
Okay, your audio is a little low. We're going to solve this problem, John. Don't worry.
Okay. Well, it's my end, I'm sure.
You're correct. It is your end. But if just out of curiosity, try turning the camera off for a second. All right, and see if that made a difference in audio.
Yeah, testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, no, it's low. Do you? All right, you can turn your camera back on.
Is his speaker phone on?
No. Should be.
Try that.
Testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
No, the
Maybe hold it real close.
or try logging out one more time and log back in. Because we're also getting a repeat. Yeah. You know, it never fails when you're trying to do something just like this and the wheels, you know, it's like getting shot at, right? It's like, okay, where's the incoming? Where's it coming from? Right.
Well,
Saturday
we've never
Night
had
Live.
we've never had these issues because he was at his permanent residence. So now that he's on the road, we're having to kind of struggle with this. So
Yeah, but we'll get it. And the audience, thank you guys so much for being patient on this one. We're working through this stuff. We'll get it. He'll get it dialed in. That's for sure. And Zach, I don't know if you want it to be in the middle, so I'm going to move you down. I'm going to put Kurt in the middle here.
Yeah, his picture looks much better down there.
Yeah, he's the wizard. The wizard's down there. We love Zach.
Yes.
And you guys will see this. He is the wizard. You'll find out as we go along here. Well, let me move into the PowerPoint for a second, and let me push a couple of things forward before we. I'm going to put this up while we're waiting. Okay, so let's talk about, the compartmentalization aspect of the diagrams here. and why we've approached this case this way. I mean, this was going to be towards the end of the presentation, but unfortunately, we're going to have to go here for you guys. This is the second floor. Let me get down here on the first floor. You know, over the last couple of weeks, while we've all been diving into this, I noticed there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 potential points of entry. Adding the window that Lou was focusing on, there may be as many as 6 into this residence. Open question to the group: why would that be an important aspect when we stand back and look at a case as complicated as this? Why would that be important to understand? Greg?
Sure. I mentioned earlier about victimology and how important it is to try to vicariously, excuse me, experience who this victim is. Well, we do the same thing with the offenders. And what I mean by that is we try to understand the offender as much as we understand the victim. And the only way that we can do that at that particular moment in the investigation is to examine the behavior of the offender during the commission of the crime.
That'd be better.
Do you want to respond to John?
Yeah, I don't know what's going on over there. But is there a coffee shop or anything near you, John? Like a Starbucks? Not that you want to go into Starbucks and start talking about your daughter's case. So maybe that's a dumb idea. For some reason you keep the whole.
Yeah, he just drove to another location trying to find a different website. So do you want me to try to see if I can get him on my speakerphone here, and maybe we'll at least see if that works?
Yeah, let's do that.
Hold on.
Oh.
So you want me to continue, Chris, in the meantime?
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, Greg.
Okay, so
meanwhile, back at the ranch,
so we try to understand the offender just as much as we understand the victim, because we want to appreciate the dynamics that are occurring between the victim and the offender, and the whys, the who, what, when, where, why, and how aspect of it, in terms of the reactions of the victim to the offenses by the offender. And we want to understand the motivations for the offender, which oftentimes, as you look at the behaviors and the dynamics between the victim and the behavior, you begin to imagine certain personality characteristics of the offender as well, and to understand why the offender decided to do this or to do that. What was it that motivated him? What was it that compelled him to conduct himself in any one of 3 ways, which we've talked about a little bit before in our first meeting. And we typically look at 3 forms of behavior: verbal behavior, nonverbal behavior, and I guess S behavior, anything to do with the S aspect of the crime. And as we commingle all the behaviors together, we come up with an imaginary person, meaning the offender. And one of the things we want to understand is all of the behavior that the offender engaged in order to successfully commit his crime. We look at MO as one of the first things, method of operation. What is one of the things that he has to do to successfully commit that crime, which is the ultimate objective of method of operation? And he's got to make entrance and exit in order to successfully commit the crime, to get away with it. And in this case, this offender certainly has to date. So why does the offender and how does the offender make entrance? And where does he go from that entrance? What parts of the house does he go into? Is he familiar with the environment? Does he know where all the other members of the family are? Does he go directly to JonBenét's bedroom? After that, and does he then take her to a location in the home that affords the most privacy, if you will, that's as far and remote and isolated from the location of other and all members of the family, particularly the father, who would represent the greatest risk to the offender? So what is it that we want to know about why he makes these choices and decisions? We want to know what is it that will make it the most effective and most efficient, and if he has to, the most flexible, based upon what's happening during the commission of the crime, other things that are introduced during the process of that criminal act, noises that he may hear, lights that may come on, the responses of the victim when he makes a first approach.
I got a question. Do you anybody here consider themselves biased to John Ramsey?
No, we lead all the information, and it leads us where it leads us.
Yeah, from the things that I've seen, no bias whatsoever.
Dr. Simon, what is it about people that can't keep an open mind?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with their experience in dealing with their own, what they hear, what they see, what they believe. Like I said before, I mean, if you're served something, you're either gonna, like, for example, food, you're either gonna eat it or you're going to reject it. And there's folks believe what they believe, and they it's very difficult sometimes to change their opinions. You almost, in a way, have to come up with something more, in many different cases, more concrete to even change their minds, because their belief system is so ingrained in a particular theory. And it's not anybody's fault.
Right.
It's
kind of the concept of prejudice, isn't it?
Yeah. And
how has that impacted, seeing how we're talking about family dynamics and the victimology here? There was a show that CBS did. They ended up getting sued for it, and they lost the lawsuit. And in that show, the conclusion was that Burke, the 9-year-old, killed his sister. And then there was a huge cover-up. I mean, there's only a couple of theories, right? A couple of camps here from an investigative analysis aspect. So I'm going to just kind of put, while we're waiting for John, put a couple of these up on the board. And Kurt, let me ask you first, with Lou, what was Lou's theory?
Well, I think he was a proponent of the intruder theory for sure. But in order to believe that it was John or Patsy or Burke that was involved in this crime, you also have to believe that somehow they were capable of taking unknown male DNA in staging it at the crime scene on JonBenét's person, and that somehow they were able to do that without any sort of transfer of their own DNA in the process. I would say that that's virtually impossible.
Yeah, and so what was let's see here from a Dean just sent me a text. So let's see, is John back, Dean?
Yes, we've got him on speaker, so let's see if you can hear.
Let's see if, so hopefully if everybody can mute so we don't get any feedback. Let's give that a try.
You can hear if they can hear you.
Yes, I can hear you guys.
Okay, perfect. But he can't see the photographs, can he?
No, but I'll explain it to him real quick. I can tell him which ones it is.
Okay.
Okay.
Hang on for a minute. Is there any way he can find internet? I don't know if this is going to work. So while he's figuring that out, Lou's theory was somehow somebody in the family would have to plant DNA underneath, unknown male DNA underneath the fingernails, of the body, on the body of JonBenét Ramsey. Is that correct?
Well, and to this day, we still don't know who that is. You know, going back to victimology, who did the Ramseys know that we don't know that was capable of doing that and staying concealed for almost 30 years now? I think I mentioned this during the first episode, that the Boulder Police Department always approached this as though there were 4 people in the house that night: John and Patsy and Burke and JonBenét. And when they received the CBI report indicating that there was unknown male DNA on JonBenét's body, and the CBI report specifically ruled out John and Patsy and Burke, they continued on with this idea that it was one of those individuals that committed the crime, not the unknown male DNA that they found evidence of on JonBenét's body.
And that was 1997.
That's correct. That was almost 3 weeks to the day after the crime was committed.
So in today's world, if within 3 weeks of a homicide, a la Brian Kohberger, would they have held that back to the public, do you think? And I'm asking the audience. I think the answer to that is pretty clear. The answer would have been no. In fact, they released that information to the public once they identified who he was. But to this day, John has been trying to advocate for companies to come in and test further the DNA. Is that correct?
Yes. One of the Boulder County District Attorney's investigators, Steve Ainsworth, has been involved in this case very early on. He now works for Othram Laboratories, and there are several laboratories that have been given contact information to the Boulder Police Department. There have been many opportunities to test and retest items that in today's investigations would have been looked at for touch DNA if it was a burglary case, let alone a homicide investigation. So there's opportunities to discover more DNA.
Yeah, there's a lot that we'll share with you as we go along. We don't want to do it tonight. I mean, we're hoping to get through this victimology aspect of things because it's really important that the public understand the dynamics that are taking place before JonBenét is killed. Why is that critical to the panel?
Well, it's something that we talk about precipitating stressors as an example. What's going on and what's happened in the lives of the victims prior to the event. We also want to ask that same question of the offender. What's going on in the life of the offender before committing the crime? Typically, we see that there's a number of precipitating stressors that are occurring in the life of the offender as well, and whether or not there may be a nexus between both the victim and the offender as it relates to those precipitating stressors, and looking for a triggering event leading up to the commission of the crime.
Okay, John is back. Sorry you're having to go through this. Your mic is muted. So there you go.
See if that works any better.
The only reason I just feel sorry for you right now, because here you are in front of the world, live, by the way, live streaming. Okay. And you're just trying to get Elon Musk to help you out and get the internet to work. But
You didn't need him,
Right.
That's right.
But here's what's going to happen. And this is why I have the comments turned off. Okay. John, and I think you're used to it, but I just want to tell you, my prediction is going to be you're going to be eviscerated on the internet because you're having internet problems. And this is one of the things that I hope, those our audience, I mean, my TIR audience are very understanding and giving and empathetic. But, we haven't heard the story yet. And he's already going to be judged 10 times, 50 times, 100 times. But kind of in a roundabout way, that's the whole reason we're doing this, so that people can see for themselves, hear for themselves, and listen to John Ramsey, who was there that day. Unfiltered. This is exactly unfiltered, this whole event as it's taking place here. Okay. But I'm watching the chat, and there are already people that have driven over him with a steamroller. Okay. Because he can't even because he can't get his internet to work appropriately because he's upstate Michigan. Okay, in the woods. Where I wish I was.
Or instead, you should realize he was in his house first, had to get in his car and start driving around because of his commitment to sharing this information with everyone.
Exactly. And so
he could have just put it at the house and said, that's it. But no, he's driven around.
All right, try it again. We've got him to where I think he can see on the computer.
Okay.
Let's see if he can talk this way.
Okay, let's try that. So we've got this where we left off where the question was, you fell in love with this young lady right here, and you had an electrical engineering degree, and then Greg was going to pick it up.
Oh, I think Dean, didn't you have a question that you posed to John?
So, John, I was asking about just your business. Lots been said about how big your business was and all that, but can you kind of explain what the level of business you were in at the time that you and Patsy met?
Yeah, I was a very, very small company. I think one person. I might have had a part-time person then, and we were a manufacturer's representative for electronic equipment to mostly sold to industry and mostly just measurement equipment, various kinds. And I was really just getting started. I'd been in the Navy for three and a half years, and left, came back, finished a master's degree, and then started my own little business. And I don't even think I had it all. I think I was working out of my house at the time. So there was nothing to be excited about at that point, certainly for Patsy.
So how long had you guys been married when you kind of felt like the business really started taking off and life was changing, lifestyle was changing, and all of that?
Well, Patsy, after we got married, she might have been my first full-time employee. She didn't get paid, but she was there every day. And she helped me a lot. And I used to say she's my secret weapon because part of what we had to do was convince a manufacturer of these instruments to let us represent them in the Southeast where we lived. And that Patsy was really good at helping with that effort, and she was a real asset in our little business. And we made some mistakes, we made some good choices, and we kind of were lucky that we got involved with the PC world, personal computer world, when it just was getting going, and IBM hadn't even really hit the stage yet. And but it was just kind of lucky because we were there and got involved with it, and started at another element of our business, which was distribution, where we actually bought the product and then resold it to. At the first, it was to individuals, and then as the market grew, the whole reseller concept developed, where these specialists would go into these companies and sell systems, and then they'd buy the equipment from us. And so we kind of shifted to a distribution model, selling to resellers who then sold to the user, and we supported the reseller. Yeah, you probably, it was working pretty well. Maybe 6 or 8 years after we got married, but we realized we were still a real small potato, and we had to get bigger faster, or we wouldn't survive in that business. And so we merged with a company in Boulder and another one in New York that I knew from being in the industry. And we put these three little companies together in, I think, 1989. And we basically took three profitable small companies, put them together, and made one large unprofitable company out of it, which wasn't the plan, but that's what happened. And so we made Boulder the headquarters because that company was more robust than the other two, including mine. And so in order to try to save this entity that we put together, I commuted to Boulder every week, back and forth from Atlanta. Fly out Monday, come back Friday or Saturday morning. And I did that for about a year. And we eventually kind of got the company going right, so it wasn't unprofitable. But we learned from Burke's teacher at the time. He was maybe in kindergarten or preschool, but he told his teacher, well, my mom lives in Atlanta, my dad lives in Colorado. And we thought, well, that's not a good picture and for the kids to have. So we said, okay, let's move to Colorado for 2 years, and then we'll come back to Atlanta. That'll give us time to really help get things working properly. And so that's how we ended up moving to Boulder. And we had not intended to stay more than 2 years max. And but say we ended up staying 5 years. And but that's kind of how we ended up in Boulder. But by that time, the business was doing well. We put these three companies together, and Lockheed had invested in us because they were trying to diversify out of the aerospace industry a little bit. And we, of course, we're not in that business at all. And So that was just sort of happened, and that was fortunate for us because they helped us financially. And so we started to really grow, and we were just at the right place at the right time, quite frankly. And that was just kind of lucky. But the industry is growing like crazy. We're kind of in part of it. We were growing as well. So, from 1990 on, we were doing well. And there's a lot of work, but we were living in Colorado, and we were doing business doing well, and so things were looking good, quite frankly.
So it would be about the time frame of when JonBenét came into the picture, would have been about the time that the business and you guys had already moved to Boulder. Is that correct, John?
Yeah, the transition to Boulder was over some time, but JonBenét was born in so she was
He's muted.
How about now?
Say it again, John. He's
Can you hear
muted.
yes.
Okay, he's back.
So which part did you hear there, Chris?
We missed everything.
Everything?
No, just JonBenét came into the picture.
So JonBenét came into the picture around 90, about the time that the business was taken off, right, John?
Yeah, we had decided to move to Boulder at that time, but hadn't moved yet. JonBenét was born in Atlanta, and in August 1990. And when we actually physically moved and got reestablished in Boulder, it was probably a year and a half later, something like that. And JonBenét was just those, she was walking, but she was very little.
So let's talk about these dynamics here, John. Can you explain who's in this picture? Can you see this picture?
Of course, I'm in the middle, of course. To my left is son John. Call him John Andrew. To the right is my daughter Melinda, who is my middle daughter, and then JonBenét is in front of Melinda, and of course Patsy, and then Burke is on Patsy's left there in the sweater. And I don't know exactly when that was taken, but JonBenét looks like she was probably maybe 3, I'm guessing.
So tell us about your older son and daughter.
Well, John Andrew, this time was going to the University of Colorado, and Melinda was at the University of Georgia in a nursing program, and they were doing well. And when I lived in Atlanta, I never expected to leave. That was my home. I loved being there, and kind of had to leave to rectify this little mess we made in the business merger. But at the time, before we decided to move, I thought, well, I hope my kids will never have to leave Atlanta, because it's a big enough city. Older, they can find employment and progress in a career. It's a big enough city. There's plenty of opportunity. We'll all be together. And that's going to be wonderful. That was the grand plan. And of course, then I ended up moving, which was not part of the plan, but had to be done. But I had really only planned to be gone 2 years max. And John and Linda, of course, were off in college, but Atlanta was in their minds their home.
How did that affect the relationships, John, having to move and basically being home part-time? How did that affect your relationship with Patsy and JonBenét and your older children?
In terms of the move,
Yeah.
Well, the kids were, well, they as soon as they met some friends, they were happy in Boulder. Of course, John was going to school there, so that worked out pretty well. And Melinda was at the University of Georgia, which was a couple hours from Atlanta, so she was living in Augusta, or not Augusta, at the time, where the school is. So it kind of worked out that we didn't really abandon them by moving, but nevertheless, that wasn't the intent or the plan at the time.
Sure. So it created a certain level of stress for the family, I'm sure, under those circumstances.
I'm sorry, say it again.
It created a certain level of stress between the family members for being, yeah.
We had a very hard time finding a house in Boulder. It was kind of a strange market, and things were expensive, and we kind of had to take what was available and call it good. And it was certainly stressful for Patsy, I'm sure. And
Sure.
The kids were, the only thing that I noticed with them was that the times 2 hours earlier, so we'd be out for dinner at 6 p.m. and they'd fall asleep because it was 8 o'clock, their body time. So they had that adjustment. But they did well. They were be fine. And Patsy was willing to do what she needed to do to support what we wanted, what we needed to do, and I was very appreciative. But she, life in Atlanta, she had lots of friends, and we both had lots of friends in Atlanta, so we hated to leave them. But sort of had to because of our work, or my work. Patsy was she was the mother.
And you had a daughter who had passed away in a car accident before you had to go to Boulder. And I would guess that was something you were still, as a family, still dealing with every year, both at the holidays and the significant dates, birthdays, etc. How did you deal with that as a family?
Well, we, of course, got the kids at school and was very involved in that. She had a philosophy of letting the kids try anything they wanted to try. And in terms of activities, JonBenét, I think, she did a lot of different things, but Burke, I remember Burke was on a little baseball team, little league team he could get involved with. He got involved with that, and we'd go to the games, and JonBenét go with us. And JonBenét, she tried soccer, she tried violin lessons, piano lessons, and she was scheduled to take a rock climbing lessons after December of '96, starting in January. So that was just kind of Patsy's philosophy. Let the kids try what they want to try and see what they might be good at and enjoy. So that's kind of what we did as a family.
And about when did JonBenét get involved with the dancing? Was it dancing in and beauty contests, or both, or what was happening with that? About how long was it?
And I don't remember the sequence, but she was in a dance class, little dance class. It was extracurricular, and she'd gotten interest. She was a very extroverted person. She was always up and in terms of emotionally and just active, very extroverted. And Patsy had been in the Miss America pageant in 1997, I think, and JonBenét was kind of enamored with that, and by the way, Patsy never told me that. We dated for 6 or 8 months, and she never ever mentioned that. And her friends told me, Patsy was in the Miss America pageant and got a top 10 award. I said, I didn't know that. She never said that. So it was not a big deal for Patsy. It was just something she did. It was a neat experience, and she got a scholarship to college. But JonBenét was fascinated with it, and I don't know whose idea it was first, but they said, okay, well, and Patsy had come down with ovarian cancer, stage 4 ovarian cancer, when JonBenét was 4, I think, and Patsy went through a year of very intense chemotherapy. It's an experimental program at National Institute of Health that we got her involved with because a friend of mine who was a doctor recommended it strongly. So he got us into this experimental program. But stage 4 ovarian was a pretty bleak outcome, potentially. So, and Patsy was just devastated, mainly because she had 2 children to raise. And she said, why would God give me 2 wonderful children to raise and then give me ovarian cancer? And she just was distraught for that reason. She potentially, for high probability, she wouldn't survive to raise her children. So, but we got her in this experimental program, and say a year later, she was declared in remission. And so she was just so grateful to be alive. I think she wanted to put a lot of investment in her kids, more than normal. Because she never said this, but I think deep down she knew she wasn't likely to live normal life.
Sure.
Your outlook is about a 5-year future at best, and so I think she really wanted to invest do a lot of things with JonBenét and Bert, pack a lot into what she probably realized was maybe a short lifespan. So they got involved with these little beauty pageants, and they had fun with it. Patsy, she was accused, of course, of living vicariously through JonBenét and dragging JonBenét to these beauty pageants. It was just the other way around. JonBenét loved it. She had fun doing them. It was fun. And we used to say, well, one thing that was important for her was in the America pageant, when she was in it, talent was a big part of the judgment, like 45%. And it wasn't just because you're pretty and have good answers to their question. They wanted talent. And so Patsy made sure these little pageants that JonBenét participated in had a talent component. And her talent was singing, and it was always with gusto, but often not on key exactly. But she was good at it. She just was natural. She just had fun with it. And we used to say, boy, she needs to not win one of these pageants so she understands you don't always win in life. But she always won something. And they didn't do a lot of them, but I don't know, maybe a half a dozen over a year or 2 was after Patsy was declared in remission from cancer. But
So John, I have a question. I want to show you this slide real fast. Let's talk about your daughter who was taken in the automobile accident.
Yeah.
Walk us through, unpack that situation emotionally for you guys and the family.
Well, Beth was my oldest daughter. She was actually born in the Philippines when I was stationed there in the Navy. And she had just graduated from college. And I used to be a worrier. I was worried about something. I never worried about losing a child. It wasn't on my worry list. And she had gone to Chicago to meet her boyfriend's parents, who she met this young man she went to Miami of Ohio University, and they met there and were dating, and it was time for her to meet his parents, and they'd gone to Chicago to meet her parents for the weekend, his parents, and they were both killed in a car accident in the middle of the day on their way to a museum in Chicago. And it just devastated me. It just emotionally was overwhelming. I don't think there's any, and at my age, I've been through a lot of different trials in life. The loss of a child is the worst for a human being, and it took me. I couldn't be alone by myself for several years, and I'd start to cry because I'd think about Beth, and I'd missed her so much. And so it was a real shock. And of course, Patsy loved her and was her stepmother, and they were very close, and it was hard. And it was particularly hard on Beth's siblings, John Andrew and Melinda. I mean, they were adults, and it was tough on them.
John, can you take us, John, back to the moment you heard that she had been? Did she survive the accident? Was it instant? How?
No.
Can you explain that to us?
I got a call from my brother. I was middle of the day on Friday. I was at work, and he said, "I've got bad news for you. Beth is gone. She was killed in a car accident." That was it. And I was just shocked. And I was mad at God. And I remember storming around my office saying, "There is no God. There is no God. How would a loving God let this happen to a wonderful child?" Because Beth was 21 and a half. Tears come later. Tears are a release. They're not immediate, at least for me anyway. I was mad. I was just so mad at God. And in shock, I'm sure. And so we made immediate arrangements to get back to Atlanta. And we got back early in the morning that evening, Friday evening. And it's a horrible thing for a human to have to go through to lose a child. And I wasn't prepared for it.
How did you process that out?
Well, it was an accident. They weren't doing anything wrong. It was an accident. He was a good young man, and I met him and liked him, and they both were killed. Beth, I learned later, I got several people contacted me, which is really wonderful. One lady who'd been at the accident scene, and I didn't know her, but she sent me a letter and said, "I saw Beth in the car, and she looked very much at peace." And that was helpful to know that. And I got a letter from her doctor. They did try to keep her alive, but they were not able to. And he said they really tried hard. And it just really, that meant a lot. But it's, you don't get over the loss of a child, you move on. And one mother described it to me, who had lost a child, said, it's like a hole in my heart that won't heal. And that's not a bad description. It's just, you're different. You've lost some innocence, obviously, with life, and you realize life can be pretty brutal. And so it took several years for me to be able to not tear up when I thought about Beth. So, and she was my oldest daughter. We were very close, and she had problems at school. She'd call me. She'd have a test that she was not confident about. She'd call me. So we were very close, and so it hurts, and it changes you, sobers your outlook, I think, a little bit on life. And I was fairly bruise free at that point. I had some bumps in life, but nothing like that. And so it really hit me hard. And
Dr. Lawrence, sorry, Dean. I was just going to ask Dr. Lawrence to give us a perspective on the effects of losing a child, psychological effects particularly.
I can't even. I have a daughter, and I cannot imagine what, John, you've been through, but can't even imagine. And I always say sorry for your losses, and just to put it in perspective from folks that do suffer some losses, and talking with some folks, there's stages that folks do go through. Could be anger, denial, bargaining, what if scenarios, and it's not the same for everybody. It's different for everyone, and it doesn't. It's you may have anger here, depression here, and it just it's just a circular pattern. I think, John, you mentioned the hole in your heart, and that hole doesn't go away. And yeah.
At her funeral, one of her little friends came up to me, who was her age, and Mr. Ramsey, if I died, I would not want my parents to be sad. And that was a very helpful comment to me. And Beth wouldn't want me to be sad. That'd be the last thing she'd want from me. Yes, I was. And I know she was in heaven. I struggled with that for a while. But, is God real? Why would a loving God let a child die? And, C.S. Lewis dealt with that issue. And so I really had to, my faith at that point was, it wasn't that strong, quite frankly. It didn't have much of a foundation. And life, what I learned, and obviously, and I learned too that lots of people, probably most everybody carries a burden at some point in life. Some of them are really tough. And life's not easy. It's tough. it can be tough. It's like the weather, you know, some days are sunny, some days you got tornadoes and thunderstorms, and that's life.
And
And
then,
So, go on, Greg. Yeah.
wonder out, but that's life is a risk, and it's difficult. It can be difficult. And I know Beth would not want to be bad, so that helped. Wonderful comment for that.
I was just going to ask, how long was it after Beth's passing that Patsy contracted cancer?
Let's see. Beth died in one thing I have learned that you get older, your brain isn't as good as it used to be.
92.
He died in 92, John.
Okay, yeah. And JonBenét was born in 90. And Patsy was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, I think, in 93 and declared remission in 94.
So now here you're faced with your wife who's contracted potentially a fatal disease. And that must have impacted you significantly.
Yeah, Patsy was devastated too. I remember telling her. I came home immediately after I got the call from my brother and told her it's gone. I wasn't very gentle with it, I guess. I just blurted it out, and she fell to the floor. She was just crushed. And because she loved Beth too. And so it was hard on all.
And then you had to go ahead.
That's all right. Yeah. How did it affect your children, like Burke? This is a picture of Burke holding JonBenét.
Yes. Yep. It sure is.
And tell us about this picture. Who's in this dynamic?
The one on the left is looks like they're decorating Easter eggs.
Correct.
Burke and JonBenét on the right, and then on the lower left, that was an Easter basket. I'm not sure where that was. It was been in our backyard. And then the one on the right on the top is Melinda, my middle daughter, and then JonBenét and Burke. And I'm not sure what they're doing there. It looks like they're eating something, maybe ice cream.
Yeah. It's hard to see this picture. They're decorating eggs. And
Yeah.
so you've got the death of Elizabeth. And how did it impact these dynamics between between Burke and JonBenét? What was your observations there and your family?
In the relationship?
Yeah.
Well, it was great. A wonderful mother and a wonderful stepmother, and our kids, they were at our house almost every weekend, and the older kids, and they just were part of the family. It was a very normal family, I think, and they got along great, and they loved it. I remember Beth was just, and I told Beth that Patsy was expecting with Burke, her first child. Beth was thrilled. She was so excited to have another sibling. We didn't know, of course, it was going to be a boy or girl, but I remember Beth was just so excited at that. And they loved each other. And they were pals, and it was a very, very good situation. I'd say.
how are they adjusting to the dynamics of loss of a sister? I mean, they were young, right? And then when mom gets sick here with Patsy, how is that? Is it putting pressure on the family, or do you recall?
Is what putting pressure on the family?
Yeah, all of the different emotional events, the death of your daughter.
Patsy's
Well,
house.
JonBenét and Burke were young, so it's hard to, and we were told by a child psychologist that kids at that age can compartmentalize things. They can have something horrible, sad happen in their life or bad happen in their life, and they can put it over here in a compartment and then go out and play. And at that age, they said kids can do that, but when they get older than that, they can't compartmentalize difficulties in life like that. And it was a tough time for everybody, and because we just hadn't planned on that. So, and it just, you don't want your children to suffer, and that no doubt caused them to suffer, and you don't want that for a child at all. And but we tried to, as best we could, help them through that process. And I know when I went back to Atlanta after Beth died, I decided I was going to do something to distract the kid. And we bought a old Land Cruiser, FJ40 Land Cruiser times, and back then you could buy them really cheap. So I thought that'd be fun for the kids, and so we went to the dealership, and John Andrews' time was probably, I don't know, 15, 14. He did not have a driver's license. And so the dealer said, "Yeah, anybody want to take this for a spin?" And John said, "Yeah, I'll take a crack at it." Said, "Yeah, nice try, but that's not going to happen." But so we tried to distract John and Melinda as much as we could with other things, but it ended up. And Melinda and Beth were very, very close. Melinda was born a couple years after Beth, and they grew up together. They were very, very
close. So the public understands the sequence here. You got a new relationship, you got a new baby. Tell us about Patsy's adornment of JonBenét. The photo on the left is right when she's obviously pretty young, and the photo on the right is pretty significant as well.
Yeah, that one on the right probably might have been taken that Christmas Day that we lost her. But Patsy was a wonderful mother, period. And she was so vilified in the media, and that was so unfair, because she was a wonderful mother and just lived for her children, particularly after going through this horrible chemotherapy treatment that was very aggressive. That was the incredible part. They just blasted her every month, and she'd come home back to Boulder and have to go to the hospital, and they eventually and determined to stay around and be a mother for her kids. So that was her frame of mind. So the police theory that this mother could have murdered her child because she wet her bed was so absurd, unbelievable.
Walk us through that.
Pardon?
Walk us through that in that walk us through her relationship. I know, people just focus on, the beauty pageants and all the other stuff, but what were the other dynamics between Patsy and, because if I look at both of these pictures, her countenance hasn't changed from the moment JonBenét was born to the last photo ever taken.
Yeah. No, she was just so grateful to have children and to be alive to take care of them when that looked like it might be in doubt. So Patsy was grateful for every day. She really was, and so focused on her children and me too. She was a wonderful wife, but she was. I never ever heard her say anything negative about anybody, even the police officer that accused her of being a murderer on national television. After the cameras shut off, that was on Larry King. He said, "Yeah, I think you're good for it." Said, "Yeah, you got to take a leap, but I think you're good for it." And Patsy, after the show was over, said to Steve Thomas, said, "Boy, this is hard on you. You're a young man, and this is not easy for you either to deal with. It's got to be hard on you." She wasn't bitter that he accused her of murder. She just had that personality. She never ever said anything about anybody except one person. And that was Geraldo Rivera, after he had a mock trial of us on television. And she didn't like Geraldo very much. That really hurt her emotionally, because he put me, Patsy, and Burke on trial in a mock trial for entertainment. And that really upset Patsy. In fact, we took television out of our house at that time because now we're not going to pay for cable TV to bring in Geraldo Rivera into our home. So that was the end of TV for us. But that's the only person I've ever heard say anything negative about.
Great. Dean, thoughts?
Yeah, Doc, I wonder, from a psychological perspective, the effects of losing one daughter, and within just a few years, your wife is faced with a potentially fatal disease. There's got to be a level of some paranoia and anger and frustration and constant questioning about the purpose of life.
Mm-hmm.
What's your experience, at least from an academic, even an academic perspective, of trying to understand that? And then, of course, eventually this leads up to the death of JonBenét and being hit with yet another worst case scenario in your life. These types of events, what we call significant stressors in life, most people experience such things over a period of time, many, many years, making it somewhat more mitigated anyway in terms of the effects. But when people experience this level of trauma, psychological and permanent trauma, in such a relatively short period of time, what happens psychologically and emotionally?
Yeah, and I think it goes back. It's unique for each individual, and how the trauma is processed, and through time, through the instant, and that's why talking to each individual that goes through that trauma and how they processed it, and what they're doing, the resilience that they have, that going through it again over time. But then keep in mind too, something can always trigger that to come around full circle again. So it's again, it's very unique to each individual. I mean, imagining, fathoming, this, and then being here and talking about it, and I think that again that I'm certain there's a strength and resiliency that has come through time, and again, each individual comes through that process, and in their own time, and that's why I said it's very unique to each individual, and that's why there's no stamp on it. There's no stamp here, and this is how it's going to be, and this is how it's going to be forever. This is how it's going to be 20 years from now. This is how it's going to be 35 years from now. This is how it's going to be 2 years from now. It's doesn't work that way.
And what are some of the triggering events in one's life that can bring back in a rush all these emotions that you've had in the past?
Well, that's
trauma. Right?
That's individualized to each individual. It could be a smell. It could be a taste. It could be a thought. It could be a moment in time. Again, it's highly individualized. These triggers.
So that leads us into this slide. Well, before this slide, John, Burks was how old when JonBenét was killed, if you recall?
Burke was 9 years old.
9 years old. How has that impacted him to this day?
Well, obviously he lost his sister. They were very close and pals almost. I mean, JonBenét would be a typical little sister once in a while and, knock over his Lego set or whatever, but Burke just didn't matter. And, but they were close. And, initially, I think when we lost JonBenét, and same for Beth, you're so focused internally on your loss, what you've lost, and your heartbreak and your sorrow and pain, and you forget you have other children that need you now just as much, if not more, than before, because they're hurting too. And that's really, when we lost JonBenét, that's really what got Patsy and I up off the floor, was to realize, hey, we still have 3 children that we love dearly, and they need us to be strong now as parents more than ever. And that's really that got us going again. And when either one of us would start to crash and burn, we say, okay, whoa, slow down. Let's not have a pity party here. Let's keep moving. And we were lucky because it seemed like when one of us was down, the other was not down, and vice versa. We were able to keep each other going. And there's one time when we were having a lunch in a little restaurant, and Burke was with some buddies. They'd gone to a baseball game or something, and we all went to lunch, and Patsy and I were sitting by ourselves because they didn't want us sitting with them, the boys. And we were both down, and we knew it. And we saw this little old lady, coming towards us on a walker, pushing a walker, and she had determination in her eyes. And we thought, oh boy, what's coming here? And she came up to us and said, I know who you are. You hang in there. And man, that was like a gift from heaven. Yeah, thanks. That was a angels touching us there, and got us out of the dumps emotionally right then. It's pretty amazing, really, because we were both down, and that fortunately didn't happen that much, but we were both in the dumps, but we were that day. But she took care of it.
So
Yeah.
he's 39 now.
Yeah.
How does he adjust?
Well, it's impacting. Again, this child psychologist said that when he was 9 years old, he can compartmentalize this stuff and put it over there and not think about it. Now, when he gets to be 35, 40, he said he won't be able to compartmentalize it. And we're seeing that in that the CBS thing really did some damage emotionally to Berg, to accuse him of murder after he'd been cleared long ago by the police way back. Even when that CBS program came out accusing Berg of murder, even the authorities in Boulder called us and said, if you need any help fighting this, let us know. This is absurd that they would accuse Berg of murdering his daughter or his sister for profit. Anyway, but this has started to haunt him. A lot of people saw that, and people unfortunately see headline and they forget the background or any other information. It's like the tabloids; they'll put an article on the front of a tabloid, two-headed baby born in Kansas, and you see it, and then you walk on through the supermarket, and then you think later, somewhere I read there's a two-headed baby born in Kansas. And it's easy to put those impressions out there that disregard facts and common sense. And that's affected Berg a bit, certainly now, because there were people that came away with that impression. Yep, CBS said so. He must have murdered he must have been the murderer of JonBenét. And boom, that's it. They've made that decision based on that program, and that's hurt Berg in some cases. He's had people that wouldn't be with him because he was a child murderer. Kids his age, and that's very sad and very difficult to correct. It's the problem in our society. We're so media saturated, and once your reputation is tarnished or damaged or destroyed, fairly or unfairly, it'll never go back to pure white. Even if it was pure white before the event, it's just there's always going to be 5 or 10% of the people, regardless of the fact, come out later, or information that comes out later, 5 or 10% of the population. Well, yeah, I don't believe that, and that's life. Unfortunately, you're stuck with it. But the best we can do to clarify that horrible thing CBS did is to find the killer, and there'll still be some people that once the killer's confessed, convicted, and in prison, they'll still think, nah, it was the little boy, or it was the dad, or it was Patsy. And that's just humanity. You can't. The Bible calls them fools, and I really wrestled with. I couldn't understand why the police were so narrow-minded and oblivious to common sense and facts and so forth in the beginning, because they just immediately decided it was the parents. They just weren't sure which one. They had to figure that out. But the Bible calls them fools and says, "Don't mess with fools. Keep them out of your life. You can't argue with them with facts, and just keep them out of your life." And of course, that was easier said than done in our case. We couldn't keep the police out of our life. But anyway, the media can do great harm. They can do very good, but they can do great harm.
Yeah, and Dr. Simon, how does this choice of murder weapon correlate with a 9-year-old's development?
well, what is it, Chris? What is it again? How does it correlate with?
Yeah, if anything.
No. I mean, no. I don't see that, and it's you know, I've seen kids. I mean, before with certain subsets of violence, but the not this.
And with the development and all the stressors and the pressures going on, is there any way, in your professional opinion, without obviously talking to Burke, but do you see that type of murder weapon correlated in any way to a pre-pubic, adolescent child, a small child?
No. And in particular, too, is that and I would say in the past, if I, had consulted on a case where, let's say, a child was violent in such a way to organisms, to perhaps you would see it. It doesn't go unnoticed. It's not hidden in the weeds. This would be something that, like I'm talking about with children who have done some bad things. You see that it's just, they don't, somebody, you would take notice to it. It'd be something that you would become aware of before anything, because children, it's very difficult for them, if not impossible, to hide. They're not going to hide in the shrubbery, so to speak. You will see this. This will be out in the open because of what their previous behavior would lend to. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah,
No.
you're saying
Yeah,
significant behaviors,
What's that? What's that?
significant past behaviors leading up to this.
You would see, yes, you, I mean, first of all, I mean, these cases that I'm talking about that I've been asked to consult on in the past, mercifully rare. And if they had done something, it would have been done to another organism. It would have there would have been something that would have led up to so you would have seen it.
So, for example,
Yeah.
cruelty to animals.
There you go. I didn't necessarily want it yet. That would be, yes, that would be one of them there. Cruelty to animals. You would
Just
see
as an
that.
example. Yeah.
Yeah, like a rehearsal. It's not,
Exactly.
you're going to see these. Yeah, you're going to see these things. These things are not going to be hidden in the forest.
Yeah. It suggests. If you
Drawings,
take a,
See?
they would be doing drawings and different things, maybe in notebooks and just all kinds of things, right?
Perhaps. And then the behavior, perhaps. And then the behavior, you would take notice to these things. You wouldn't, this is not something that the children that I've been asked to consult with in the past, teachers, parents were aware of these types of warning signs. It just didn't, come about, you see.
which is even consistent for adults.
That is it, right? There you go. Yeah.
Right? Engaging in the same kinds of behavior. I mean, this isn't the type of activity that is spontaneous on the spur of the moment.
Not at all. not at all. And that is why you would see these things over time develop.
Yeah.
I mean, so yeah.
I mean, I look at some of the behavioral aspects of the creation of this garrote, and I see sustained concentration. This has taken some time. It didn't just happen in a disorganized manner. in terms of the wrapping and the creation of the knots, and it suggests repetition in the past, doesn't it? And experience with it, knowing how to do it and how to create it.
Right, exactly. Over time, and the and age would have and would have an effect on that.
Yeah.
Through time, through experience, to get to that level.
Yes.
So this knot in of itself, or excuse me, everybody's focusing on the knot, okay? And Greg, that's interesting observation and comment you just made. While everybody's focusing on the knot, what should we really be looking at in the big picture here? And not how it's manufactured. I mean, yes, that's an aspect, right, that takes a lot of diligence, a lot of thought process, but it's probably not the first one ever made. Would you agree or disagree?
Yeah, I mean, I think it suggests experience, which means over time, this has been occurring. This isn't, again, the spur of the moment, once and done. This is an individual who has experienced in the past the creation of the same thing, and at least the attempt, as Doc has suggested, to apply it in other instances of whether it be inanimate objects or even animate objects that are easy to dominate, manipulate, and control in that experimentation.
Okay, so what type of emotional response is whoever manufactured that looking for? Not jealousy, a rage, or something. What's happening pre-incident to get them to this point where this becomes a manufactured murder weapon at the location where the victim is discovered?
Well, for me, it's a reflection of a manifestation of a need to have absolute power and control and domination over the victim. And the utilization of this type of an implement is not what you would call a method that employs a quick death, but it's suggestive of something that is long and drawn out over a period of time. Now, it depends on how much time the individual had, of course, but the level of power and influence that this individual has over, at least in his fantasy mind, creation of the crime and the living out of the crime, then ultimately the application of it, or rather the living out of the fantasy, and then the engagement to actually commit it. There's a sense of satisfaction, excitement, and fulfillment in the power that one has and the gratification that one achieves in the S areas of one's life, particularly elements of sadism, and to be able to watch and witness the effects of the application of that garrote to the victim. And it's slow, methodical, and drawn out.
Would the intensity be important to your point, Greg, if the autopsy showed an intensity volume?
Oh, absolutely. And it's consistent with what level of control that the offender feels that they had during the commission of it, or lack of control. And therefore the need to apply more force or less force.
Well, and just, I'm sorry, just to support that, you have to keep in mind that the cord was repositioned. You can see cord marks at 2 different locations on JonBenét's neck.
Yeah, great point, Kurt. And we're going to dive into that in one of the filters, down the line. That is an excellent point. We're really going to put some other people on this with Doc Simon and Greg too. So, Doc Simon, what the intensity level? What say you about what the perpetrator could possibly be processing?
Well, I mean, possibly, this could be maybe an attempt. Really, I mean, it could be self-hatred, self-loathing, and then what the opposite representation of that, and perhaps trying to gain control through that and gain to feel in many ways whole again, but it's just one. It's one example. I mean, they're maybe unconsciously trying to rewrite their own history and inflict maybe the trauma that they had endured, if they did, or to identify with the aggressor if they had one, and rewrite the history to inflict that trauma, identifying with the aggressor and then externalizing their own victimization through the whole process. Again, that fusion of S and aggression together, and the intensity of that in that moment.
So, if I understand you guys correctly, I'm kind of putting it into, because you guys have known me forever. I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed. However, I do understand this stuff. And so what you're saying is one would expect to, because this is obviously driven by an SA fantasy, correct?
Yes.
And one would expect to see some type of pre-incident behaviors that would lead up to, the manufacturing of that type of selecting weapon, right?
Yes.
Keep me honest. Okay.
Yes.
And then you would expect to see somewhere even before maybe even this poor little girl, some type of pre-incident or some type of behavior that maybe would give us an indication that said, look, as a law enforcement investigator, I would want to start looking for these types of things before the assault. Would that be an accurate assessment?
Certainly.
Yes.
Okay. And once you have the assault, would the suspect have stopped, or would they have escalated in relationship to their SA activity now that they have taken her life? What would you expect to see?
Go ahead, Doc.
You first, I insist.
Well, past behavior is predictive of future behavior. I would expect to see more of it. There may be a cooling off period for this individual because of all the attention that has gathered around this event. And the individual is experiencing a level of glee and satisfaction because the impact and attention it's receiving, knowing that he is the individual responsible for it and still controls it.
And to piggyback off that, the behavior could be manifested in something else. It doesn't necessarily need to be the same.
Sure.
So
That's an interesting point. Like what?
Well,
Greg?
Again, we've made reference to inanimate objects and animate objects. It can be animals, and it could be something inanimate. Would be a representation of a victim, say in a doll,
or themselves,
or themselves. Yes,
kind of a la BTK, and all of his things that he would explore with. Didn't he leave a doll during his events? Right, he left a doll inside of a cereal box, if I remember right, with the driver's license of Fox, one of his victims. What was going on internally for him? Is that still power, control, and dominance, Greg and Larry?
I think so. It's an opportunity for them to relive the incident in their mind and continue to carry out those fantasies. As we all know in our own legitimate experience, we fantasize about doing certain things that we presume are going to give us great satisfaction. And recognizing that eventually that fantasy is never perfect enough. We dream about it, we create it, we can imagine it, but eventually you've got to engage in it. You've got to experience it, unless somehow there's been some intervention to prevent that from happening.
And many of these themes, these individual themes, and again, they're unique to individuals. The themes of these fantasies are not modified completely over time.
So are you guys seeing any sense at this? I mean, obviously this is only the second time we're diving into this publicly, but I want to ask a quick question. Well, not yet. Are you guys sensing anything in relationship to Burke being, if we as an organization, the Cold Case Foundation, is Burke on the table from any of the evidence that we have seen up to this date?
No.
No, this is no childhood or adolescent crime. Or for that matter, even if it was a teenager, let's say it was a teenager, as the doc has suggested, you'd see that pre-incident behavior and a history of antisocial behavior that is consistent with the application of this type of a tool.
Dean, you've been quiet. Do you see any indication that Burke is involved in this?
No.
In any way, shape, or form?
No, not of any of the evidence that we've seen.
Because I mean, we were straight with Mr. Ramsey. I mean, he said, help us solve this case. That's what he came to us and he said, well, I want you guys, whatever you need, you have access to. And Zach, how many documents have we had access to? And I know that Butch dropped off.
More than 23,000.
More than 23,000. And we also have access to some systems that have been flushing a tremendous amount of information and putting some things in proper order for us. So I feel comfortable tonight telling the public, but Greg, you're the executive director, so it has to come from your mouth, that we are going to probably officially take Burke off of the suspect list for the murder of JonBenét Ramsey.
Well, I think anything's possible,
Okay.
but there's rarely do we see a crime that even the possibilities are so improbable, it's unrealistic to even consider it. And for me, this falls in that category.
Yeah, we're moving way past it.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that's yeah. And by the way, so we have access to every piece of paper, and we have been reading them. In fact, Zach has been reading them as well as myself. And of course, we've been working with John for just about a year now, behind the scenes. The public did not know until he felt comfortable coming out and talking about what we're doing here tonight. Okay, which leads me to, okay, if that's the situation, we know about the stressors within the families, but there are also some other anomalies that are going to lead us into the next episode that we are really paying attention to, because you would expect some type of post-incident behaviors as well, correct? Greg?
Sure.
Larry?
Yes.
Dean?
Yep.
Yep. Zach?
Yep.
Kurt, what do you think?
Yeah, especially with kids. They can't keep the secret.
Okay. So that led us to, okay, if Lou was onto something in a stranger situation, and now we know for a fact now that the DNA, there is DNA that exists, and it is an unidentified male. Zach, can you tell us about that from the reports?
Yeah, I mean they have a composite from multiple sources that they known male. They've tested against multiple people, none have matched. They're still looking.
Okay. So, but we have DNA, we have two sources that are strategically able, as we go on here, to be tested, that Mr. John Ramsey can have a lab theoretically based on the reports that we're reading. And keep me in line here. There is still DNA that can be tested and potentially a suspect identified based on what the lab reports are saying.
Yeah, if that
So-
question was me, hold on. Yeah, if that question was addressed to me, there is stuff that can be tested, but most importantly, it needs to be reformatted to be compatible with the forensic genetic genealogy, which is the latest and greatest tool to use DNA to solve crime. DNA tool that really can solve crimes. Historically, DNA has been used to identify against other bad guys that have been caught in their DNAs in the database, in the bad guy database called CODIS. And that worked great 30 years ago, but it's not valid. It's not current today. It's not as useful and as powerful as this forensic genetic genealogy. That's technique has solved all sorts of old cold cases, and that the DNA data needs to be reformatted to be compatible with the forensic tool. CODIS has 15 or 20 markers from our, has billions of markers in it. This new format for FGG, it's called forensic genetic genealogy, has tens of thousands of markers. So it gives you a huge amount of information, and I said it's like a nuclear weapon to solving crimes, and we've been advocating to use it.
And I have here a 3-page report that we'll get into not tonight, but about who is in the circle, out of the circle, and how that genetic DNA can go. But before we get there, we have to talk about the possibilities of points of entry into the house. And this is one of the things that we've been talking about in terms of when we think about compartmentalization. We think about the floor plan in the house. And this is something that Dean talked about on our last episode. If you haven't seen it yet, go look at it. But just like human behavior, a lot of times behavior is compartmentalized. And in my experience, a lot of times when suspects come into residences and stuff, and there is a familiarity potentially with that residence, that compartmentalization becomes quite important. Greg said something recently where, and I'll let him repeat it. Greg, in your opinion, do you think the suspect who may have been involved in this could have come into this house before?
Oh, I'm confident that he definitely came into the house before, and at least on one occasion.
Anybody else want to opine on that principle? Okay. And go ahead, Doc.
No, I just was piggybacking off Greg. Yeah, I mean, if you're going to step into a home, usually, if anybody objects to it, you know what's on the other side of it.
Okay. And so, which led us to this particular concept to explore the points of entries. These are actual pictures of the butler's door. And also it is a picture of the stairwell going up from the first floor to the second floor. John, do you remember this door?
Yes, yeah, I can. It never was used. We called it the butler's pantry because it had a sink down there. So we didn't, that's kind of what we refer to. Kind of a level between the first floor and the basement that had a door to the outside, to the side of the house. We never used it. It was in the house we bought.
Okay. And on the other side there is where the ransom note was found. And we're going to break that down, but I'm kind of leading up into the next piece of the puzzle here.
Yeah.
For the next program, which is going to be the second filter. Greg, tell everybody about the second filter and why 2 and 3 will become significant for the audience.
Okay, so you bet. As you can see from the diagram, the second filter is the initial contact site. We're going to be discussing based upon the lifestyle and all the events that had occurred in her life and in her activities definitely within the last 48 hours. And then to expand that out to the last probably couple months in terms of significant events. We want to know to what degree an individual may have had exposure to her, and then what the capacity may have been. And then we're going to be talking about the crime scene itself and talking about all the potential entrances and exits. What would be convenient for an offender? What would be inconvenient? What would allow the offender to be able to move about as easily as possible in terms of their experience in the home, their familiarity in the home, and who slept, who basically lived where during the nighttime. So this is going to be quite a conversation and discussion to allow us to get some insight into the offender's mind, both at the crime scene, but also what possible events and experiences may have occurred where the offender may have had some contact with the victim.
So, if you were to sum up tonight's concepts, John, what are your expectations for your family? And help the public understand why you're extending yourself. No bars held. No, you're not holding back. It's like, let's go.
Well, in the beginning, there was a rage in my heart and my head against this killer. And I dealt with the whole concept of forgiveness and went through that for 4 or 5 years, trying to get my head around how can you forgive someone like this? And that's a whole big chapter, I guess, in my life. But this chapter now, for the sake of my family, needs to be closed. Particularly for Burke's case, where he was so vilified in the media for entertainment and no basis of fact. Even the police said, that's absurd. This was not done by a 9-year-old little boy. So we need to close this chapter for my family and my grandchildren. Now they're old enough now to understand what the history was, and it's important for our family to get this behind us completely.
That's a great point. We have another generation now that is exposed to this.
They're adults now.
And your grandkids. I mean, how many in your immediate family are with you guys today?
3 living children. Burke not married. Will be someone special. John had been married for years. And has 3 boys, amazing boys. We're going to one's graduation from college. And John Andrew has a daughter and a son who are younger. They're in high school. And they're all very proud of them. They're amazing kids and all different, as grandkids tend to be. But we're grateful.
From my experience as an investigator, we would have seen this again in your family.
Yeah, thanks. Well,
Meaning, whoever, if in any way, shape, or form, you were the perpetrator or your wife or your son, we'd have a trail of victims. Am I right, Dr. Lawrence, Dr. Larry?
It never made sense why the police would focus on us, other than we were in the house where we should have been at that time of night. And they didn't. We were told by the DA years later that the police just didn't think we acted right that morning. And I don't know how they expected us to act, but none of them had ever dealt with this kind of situation before, so their ability to judge that that morning when I my son, JonBenét, was in the hands of someone, I thought I could get her back. I really did. If I kept my wits about me and was smart about it and stayed focused on doing whatever I could do to get her back. And, you know, with Beth, I didn't have that choice. When I got the word that she was gone, had died, she was gone. So I was really focused on I'm going to get JonBenét back. I'll get her back. I really thought I had the opportunity to do that. So that's not acting right, then so be it. But not a good thing to base a guilt or innocence decision on.
I totally agree, my friend. Well, we're going to pick it up. Dr. Larry, Simon, did you want to say something?
Well, yeah, I thought you'd called, but yeah, and that's something that John had said and I talked about. Whereas, you know, when you have something like this, there's no such thing as acting wrong or right, and that's where knowledge is power. And you know, I think that you know is important.
You know, the fact that he mentioned that his grandkids are now, you know, experiencing this is almost a second wave, another tidal wave, and they weren't even born. Mm-hmm. That is a very powerful statement from John Ramsey.
Yeah. Yes.
And I hope the world heard that tonight. If you get anything out of this tonight, that is an extremely powerful statement that people who weren't even born are also experiencing the hate towards this family without allowing the process to be completed yet. And this is why the Cold Case Foundation, one of the reasons we exist, is because we are in the middle and we're going to follow the evidence where the evidence takes us. And right now, that evidence is DNA that is on the victim, the daughter of this man, in the upper left-hand corner. There is an unknown male DNA on her body. And his family, him, his son, his wife, and himself has been cleared from that DNA source. So guess what? The police department, from an investigative side, get on it. Let's get this DNA tested and let's get this person, because there are probably a lot more children out there by the hands of this individual. And God forbid we didn't do anything about it. Dean?
That's the scary part of letting this go on. As Lou Smith said, the detective who was brought in on this case by the DA out of retirement, solved over 200 homicides, said, you know, there's a very dangerous killer out there and nobody's looking for him. And that's, I hope and pray that he hasn't killed other children. But
well, you know, John, the upside here is this: shows, programs like this, we will memorialize your feelings and your observations about your family. And we appreciate, you know, your candor, and I know the audience does. And just so the audience knows, by the way, I turned the comments off. So, you know, you can't pull your swords out and go in there and, you know, take your slashes from not from my audience, but from the trolls that, you know, will still be out there. It's kind of a crazy world, but we've had you here for 3 hours, John, and I promise you we'll get the internet thing fixed here, for the next one. But the next one, we're going to get a little bit deeper here. And, but before that time, is there anything else we didn't ask you or you feel tonight that is important that you would like to tell the world?
Well, I'm grateful for the continued interest in our case, even though some of it's negative, but most of the comments we get and have seen have been supportive, and people want this solved too. There are a lot of people hurt by this, not just our family. I got a letter the other day from a young lady who was now JonBenét's age, but was a little, 6-year-old child back when this happened, and it hurt her. She is bearing some of that hurt from JonBenét's murder, and I know there's other kids like that probably feel the same way. It has impacted their innocence when it shouldn't have, but it did. So it needs to be resolved to the degree we can get it resolved.
Dean, Kurt?
Yeah, I think the thing I'd leave people to think about is that we're on a journey. And I think if you look at investigations are a journey. And along the way, we're either going to sidestep because it takes us sideways, we're going to step forward, we're going to step back. And I think if we just look for a moment at the evidence, we already know we've got 2 different locations where we have DNA. I think everybody that in our team that has looked at this is convinced there's got to be DNA on the garrote. And so if we look at the next step, if the garrote's tested and the garrote comes back with DNA that's the same as the DNA that's on the body, we're continuing to move further and further down the road. And I think as we look at everything from behavior to evidence, both forensic, circumstantial, these are like huge puzzles. And it's very important for us to understand all the dynamics of it, not just one. And this is about human beings, their life, their families' lives. And, I've said this before in settings. It's so easy to jump up on a forum and pull the trigger and shoot your bullet of what you think, because you want to be the first one to say you know what happened. But I just remind everybody, that's a bullet you don't get to put back in the chamber. And so what we're trying to do is systematically work our way through all of this, address things as they come up, try to be as forthcoming as we can with the information we have. And so I just would encourage people, even if you don't agree with what we're talking about tonight, stay with us for a while, and be willing to look at what the facts are. There are a lot of people who have come to the table initially on this case. And I think Lou Schmidt was one of them who initially, when he heard about it before he got in, thought, oh, this is probably something tied to the family. But it's when you get in and you start digging through it. I think John Douglas was the same way when he heard about it before he got in and started. So it's easy to jump to conclusions. And I would encourage people, if you're taking the time to watch, then take the time to stay with us through the process. And let's see where we are when we get through all this. We might all discover something together that would be exciting. And whoa, how exciting would it be to get some answers? They could close the door and give some answers to the family, but also give the answers to people all over the country as well. Because to John's point, not only this little 6-year-old girl, but tons of young ladies and individuals have lived in fear because of something that happened to somebody else. And so these kinds of cases, the waves of reciprocal waves that flow through a community and through people's lives is just unprecedented. And so I think this is a good call for us to do and to stay focused on. So.
Perfect. Well said. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to pull everybody out. I'm going to hang around just for a second, but I will see you guys on the next one. John, thank you so much for going out of your way to get the sound thing going, and we'll get it working on the next one. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you all very much.
Okay, we'll see you on the next one. Let's see here. Let me pull everybody out here and just address a couple of things real fast. Thank you all so much for being here with us tonight. We're very grateful to each and every one of you in our audience. I just want to grab, since the ransom, who knew about it? We're going to answer all of these questions as we go along here. Thank you, Save America and his family dignity. Yep, this happens. Who would advance? I don't want to stay. Who advanced? Stay with a child victim. Thank you, Mr. Ramsey. We agree. And thank you for the panel for all you do. Thank you, guys. We can't do any of this without you as our audience. You make this channel and you make us better. You make us better people. So that said, sometimes kindness is contagious. And I think this is one of those cases where I'm hoping we can at least keep an open mind, just like Dean said. And let's get to the end of this thing. And hopefully we'll all look back and go, wow, I didn't know that, or, well, that was interesting. I'm sorry to see that, or sorry to hear that. We're going to follow the evidence. We're going to keep following the evidence. And the next program is going to be much better than this one. I promise you. Also, Wednesday night, we have Stephen Christie, Consalva's coming to visit with us here. We're going to talk about their recent experiences at CrimeCon. We're going to talk about Kaylee. We're going to talk about their foundation that's been started. It's going to be a really, really good show. And also, we're going to go up tomorrow. Can somebody tell me where this map came from in the Nancy Guthrie case? I've got a lot of questions, and hopefully we're going to get some answers to that tomorrow night. So anyway, let's continue to be good to each other. And aloha, take care of each other. We'll see you on the next one. See you.
Hard working every day, I'm stressed out 24/7, babe. No timeouts, wish we could fly away. You and I go to our favorite place. Oh yeah, make special memories together. I'll be your company now and forever. I say we fly away, you and me, go to our favorite place. Feeling the sun on my face in Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. I need a summer breeze, some fresh air to put my mind at ease. No cares. You wanna come with me? Me and you go to our favorite tree. Are you ready now? We jump on a plane now. We're taking away. Yeah, we're taking away. Don't hesitate now. We're taking away. Yeah, we're taking away. We'll never come down. We're going away. Yeah, we're going away. You and me. Feeling the sun on my face in a while.